Imagine spending 2,190 hours every single year doing nothing but moving your jaw up and down. That is not a hyperbolic number or a random guess. It is a biological calculation. If you were a typical primate of your body size, you would spend roughly 6 hours every day, 365 days a year, simply chewing. You would be grinding through tough fibrous stalks, tearing at leathery raw skin, and masticating bitter, dense tubers until your jaw muscles ached and your teeth wore down to the gums. You would be trapped in a full-time job where the only salary is enough calories to barely survive until tomorrow. Yet here you are, likely finishing a meal in 15 minutes that provides enough energy to power your complex brain for hours. You have escaped the chewing trap that holds every other creature on this planet prisoner. You are sitting in a comfortable chair, breathing easily, while your body performs a miracle of energy extraction that should, by all laws of nature, be impossible. You are a biological anomaly, a creature that has somehow cheated the metabolic taxman. But this freedom came with a terrifying price. Every other animal on Earth is an independent processing plant. A lion can swallow raw zebra flesh and turn it into muscle. A cow can turn grass into milk. They possess the internal hardware to handle the world exactly as it is presented to them. You, however, are different. If I were to drop you into the middle of a lush forest filled with raw plants and wild game, but took away your ability to create heat, you would likely starve to death with a full stomach. Your gut is too small, your teeth are too weak, and your internal chemistry is too specialized. You have outsourced your survival to an external force, and in doing so, you have become the only species that is biologically dependent on a technology. The math of your existence simply does not add up. If we look at the pure physics of the human body, we run into a massive energy deficit almost immediately. The human brain is a greedy organ. While it only makes up about 2% of your total body mass, it consumes more than 20% of your daily energy budget while you are just sitting still. It is a high-performance engine that never turns off. In the wild, energy is the ultimate currency, and nature is a brutal accountant. Most animals cannot afford a brain like yours because the cost of running it would exceed the calories they can physically gather and digest in a single day. This is the paradox of our species. We have the most expensive hardware in the animal kingdom, but we have the smallest, weakest digestive systems to power it. Scientists call this the expensive tissue hypothesis. It was popularized by researchers Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler in the mid-1990s, and it changed how we view our own evolution. They noticed a strange pattern across the primate family tree. As brain size goes up, the size of the digestive tract goes down. You cannot have a massive energy-hungry brain and a massive energy-hungry gut at the same time. There isn't enough fuel in the tank for both. So at some point in our deep past, our ancestors made a high-stakes gamble. They traded their digestive independence for cognitive power. They shrank their colons and expanded their gray matter. But this trade was only possible because of a single world-altering discovery. Cooking is not a culinary choice, it is a biological requirement. When you apply heat to food, you are essentially performing pre-digestion outside of your body. Think about what happens to a piece of raw meat or a starchy potato when it hits a flame. At a molecular level, the heat is doing the heavy lifting that your stomach would otherwise have to do. It denatures proteins, which means it physically unfolds the tightly coiled strands of amino acids so that your digestive enzymes can get to work immediately. It gelatinizes starches, turning hard, resistant crystals of carbohydrates into a soft, easily absorbed energy source. In a raw state, many of the calories in a wild tuber are physically locked away behind cell walls that your body cannot easily break. Fire acts as a key. Richard Wrangham, a biological anthropologist at Harvard University, spent years studying chimpanzees in the wild and realized that even with their massive jaws and powerful guts, they struggled to maintain their weight on raw food alone. He conducted experiments, some of which involved feeding raw versus cooked food to mice. The results were startlingly clear. Mice fed cooked meat, and starch gained significantly more weight than mice fed the same amount of raw food. The calorie count on the label might be the same, but the net energy gained by the body is vastly different. Cooking increases the caloric yield of food by as much as 30 to 50% while simultaneously reducing the energy cost of digesting it. The flame did what our stomachs could not. This brings us to a mystery that has haunted archaeology for decades. If cooking is what allowed us to become human, when exactly did the first fire start? When we look at the fossil record, we see a massive leap in brain size around 1.8 million years ago with the appearance of Homo erectus. This was a species that looked remarkably like us. They had long legs built for distance, smaller teeth, and brains that were nearly double the size of their predecessors. But when archaeologists look for evidence of fire from 1.8 million years ago, the trail goes cold. For a long time, the oldest undisputed hearths were only about 400,000 years old. This created a massive million-year gap in our story. How could Homo erectus have grown those big brains without fire? The search for the smoking gun of ancient fire led researchers to a remote location in South Africa called Wonderwork Cave. This is a massive, deep cavern that has been used by various species for millions of years. In 2012, a team led by Francesco Berna found something extraordinary, buried under layers of sediment nearly 1,000,000 years old. They found microscopic traces of wood ash and burned bone fragments. But the location was the key. These traces were found nearly 30 meters deep inside the cave. This wasn't a spot where a lightning strike could have started a brush fire. This wasn't a place where a natural wildfire could reach. These fires were brought there. They were tended. They were controlled. The evidence was small, but the implications were tectonic. Finding fire in Wonderwork Cave pushed our timeline back, but it still didn't quite reach the 8 million-year mark where Homo erectus first appeared. Some researchers like Wrangham argue that the proof isn't in the ash, but in the bones. He points to the anatomy of Homo erectus as the ultimate evidence of cooking. Their rib cages were no longer funnel-shaped like an ape's, which houses a massive fermenting gut. Instead, they were barrel-shaped and narrow, like yours. Their molars were small, suggesting they no longer needed to grind tough raw matter for hours. To Wrangham, the body of Homo erectus is a fossilized receipt for a cooked diet. Even if the campfires have long since washed away, the biology remains. But fire did more than just change our stomachs. It changed our faces. If you look at a gorilla or a chimpanzee, you'll notice they have massive protruding jaws and heavy ridges on their skulls. Those ridges are there to anchor enormous chewing muscles. If you want to spend 6 hours a day grinding raw roots, you need some serious hardware. Humans, however, have a strange genetic glitch. We carry a mutation in a gene called MYH16, which is responsible for the heavy-duty muscle fibers in the jaw. Sometime around 2.4 million years ago, this gene was inactivated in our lineage. Our jaw muscles shrank, becoming much smaller and weaker than those of any other primate. This mutation should have been a death sentence. In the wild, a predator or a scavenger with a weak jaw is a creature that is about to starve. But in our ancestors, this weakness became an opening. Because our jaw muscles no longer needed to be thick and powerful, they no longer needed to be anchored to massive bony ridges on the skull. This allowed the skull itself to remain flexible for longer during childhood, creating the physical space for the brain to expand. We traded biting power for thinking power. But this trade only worked because we had already started to use fire and tools to process our food. We didn't need a powerful jaw anymore because we had a hearth. We broke the food down with heat and stone before it ever touched our lips. This leads us to a counterintuitive reality. We are a species that evolved through weakness. By becoming more vulnerable, we became more capable. Our teeth got smaller because our food got softer. Our guts got shorter because our food got more efficient. We were slowly, generation by generation, molding our bodies around the presence of fire. We were becoming obligate cookivores. This is a term used to describe an animal that has specialized so far into a specific diet that it can no longer survive without it. We are the only primate in this category. Nature was no longer our master. The fire was. As we spent more time around the flame, the very structure of our day began to shift. Before fire, the setting of the sun meant the end of all activity. In the African savanna, the night is a terrifying place for a primate with poor night vision and no claws. You would climb into a tree, huddle in the dark, and wait for the sun to return. But fire changed the clock. It created a second day. For the first time, our ancestors had hours of light and warmth after the hunt was over and the foraging was done. This was time that didn't have to be spent searching for food or chewing. It was a surplus of time, and how we spent that surplus is what truly made us human. Anthropologist Polly Winsner spent decades studying the Juhon people of southern Africa, documenting the difference between day talk and firelight talk. During the day, conversations were mostly about logistics, where the water is, who is working, the immediate needs of survival. But at night, gathered around the fire, the conversation changed. People told stories. They talked about their ancestors. They shared myths and social gossip. They practiced the complex art of being a group. The fire created a social theater. It forced us to sit face to face in a small circle, making eye contact and sharing the same sensory experience. It was the original social media, a place where collective culture was forged in the embers. But there was a darker side to this newfound warmth. By gathering around a fire, we were also painting a giant target on our backs. A fire in the dark is visible for miles. It smells of wood smoke and roasting fat scents that would attract every predator in the area, from lions to hyenas. This meant that the fire didn't just provide warmth, it demanded protection. It forced us to develop even more complex social structures. Someone had to guard the perimeter, someone had to gather the fuel, someone had to keep the flame alive. If the fire went out, the group was defenseless. This created a level of interdependence that is almost unique in the animal kingdom. We became a species that couldn't survive alone, because the fire required a team. This dependency has followed us into the modern world in ways we rarely acknowledge. We like to think of ourselves as the masters of technology, but we are actually its servants. Think about your own kitchen. It is the heart of your home, just as the hearth was the heart of the cave. You likely have a stove, an oven, a microwave, and a toaster, a suite of advanced thermal machines designed to do the work that your ancestors first discovered nearly 2 million years ago. We have built an entire global civilization on the assumption that we will always have the energy to heat our food. What would happen if that energy suddenly vanished? We often assume that a raw diet is the most natural way for a human to live, but the science says otherwise. In the 1990s, the Gießen Raw Food Study examined over 500 people who lived on a purely raw diet for years. The results were a wake-up call. Despite having access to modern blenders, high-quality produce, and imported nuts and oils, many of the participants were chronically underweight. Even more shocking, about half of the women in the study stopped menstruating entirely. Their bodies simply weren't getting enough net energy to maintain the expensive process of reproduction. Even with all our modern advantages, a raw diet is a biological struggle for a human being. This is because we have physically changed. We have a smaller mouth than any other primate of our size. We have a stomach that is uniquely sensitive to toxins that are normally destroyed by heat. Our small intestine is where we do most of our absorption, and it is optimized for high-quality, easily digestible food. We are a specialized machine that requires a specialized fuel. We are the only animal that can get fat, yet we are also the only animal that can starve while surrounded by raw calories. We have moved the goalposts of biology, and there is no moving them back. The story of human evolution is often told as a story of the brain getting bigger, but it is just as much a story of the stomach getting smaller. We are the product of a massive biological downsizing. We shed our armor, we lost our strength, and we gave up our ability to digest the world as it is. In exchange, we got the ability to imagine things that don't exist, to build cathedrals, and to fly to the moon. But all of that, every poem, every skyscraper, every scientific discovery, is fueled by a fire that someone had to keep burning. We are not just the animals that use fire. We are the animals that fire created. Look at your hands. They are delicate and precise, capable of typing on a keyboard or performing surgery. They are not the heavy, calloused tools of an animal that must spend its life digging for tubers or tearing at raw hides. They are the hands of a creature that has been pampered by 1,000,000 years of soft-cooked food. Even your sense of taste has been hijacked. You are drawn to the smell of browning meat and caramelized sugar, the Maillard reaction, because your brain recognizes those scents as signs of pre-digested energy. You are hardwired to love the flame. But this brings us back to the paradox. We feel like the masters of the world because we can control heat, but that control is the only thing keeping us from extinction. We are the apex predator, but we are also the most fragile. If you were to take a chimpanzee and put it in a cage with a mountain of raw sweet potatoes, it would thrive. If you put a human in that same cage, they would slowly wither away. We are a species that has bet everything on a single trick. We have placed our entire biological future in the hands of a chemical reaction that happens outside our own skin. This was the first great migration of the human spirit. We didn't just move across continents. We moved our vital functions out of our bodies and into the environment. We turned the forest into our stomach. We turned the sun into our daytime and the campfire into our night. We became a collective organism, a hive of fire watchers. And while it has given us the world, it has also made us a permanent hostage to our own inventions. We like to think that we discovered fire, but the truth is far more unsettling. Fire discovered a weak, small-jawed primate that was desperate enough to try anything to survive. It offered a deal. I will give you the world, but you will never be able to live without me again. Our ancestors took that deal. They gathered the wood, they blew on the embers, and they watched as the smoke rose into the African sky. They didn't know that they were signing a contract that would rewrite their DNA and change the shape of their children's faces. They just knew that for the first time in their history, they weren't hungry and they weren't afraid of the dark. But that security was an illusion. We are the only species that has traded its biological independence for a seat at the table of the gods. We have grown so powerful that we can destroy the planet, yet we are so weak that we cannot survive a week without a stove. We are a species of giants built on a foundation of tissue paper. We are the architects of the modern world, but we are also the orphans of the wild, unable to return to the raw world that birthed us. Every meal you eat is a reminder of this ancient dependency. Every time you turn on a burner or light a grill, you are performing a ritual that is nearly 2 million years old. You are feeding the fire so that the fire can feed you. It is a symbiotic relationship that has no parallel in nature. We are the fire apes, the creatures of the hearth, the masters of the flame who are simultaneously its most helpless subjects. We have traveled so far from our beginnings that we have forgotten who we used to be, but our bodies haven't. Our small teeth and our short guts are the permanent records of our surrender. The fire didn't just cook our food, it cooked us. It took a shivering, vulnerable primate and forged it into a god, but it did so by making that god a permanent addict. We are now a species that lives in a world of our own making, protected by a thin wall of heat from a nature that we can no longer digest. We are the kings of the earth, but our crown is made of embers that require constant tending. If they ever go out, the kingdom falls with them. So, the next time you sit down to a warm dinner, look at the steam rising from your plate and consider the staggering cost of that convenience. You are not just eating food, you are consuming the product of a 2 million-year-old technological revolution. You are the beneficiary of a biological gamble that paid off in the most spectacular way possible, giving you the brain to understand the universe while taking away your ability to eat it raw. You are the apex of evolution, a masterpiece of complexity and intelligence, but you are also a creature that has lost the ability to survive on its own. Think about the sheer weight of that history. Every calorie you absorb was bought with the sweat of an ancestor who refused to let the fire die. They carried those embers across deserts and over mountains, through ice ages and floods, because they knew that the fire was their life. They passed that flame down through thousands of generations until it reached you, sitting in your modern home, completely unaware of the debt you owe to that first flickering light in the dark. What is the one food you could never imagine eating raw? The answer to that question isn't just about your personal taste, it's about your survival. It's about the fact that your body has moved past the era of raw struggle and into the era of thermal efficiency. You are a different kind of animal now, one that has left the forest behind and moved into the kitchen. You are the only creature on Earth that can turn a cold, hard root into a delicious, energy-rich meal, and that ability is the foundation of everything you are. But never forget that this power is not truly yours, it belongs to the flame. You have spent your entire life believing you are at the top of the food chain. You look at the lions and the wolves and the sharks, and you feel a sense of superiority because of your tools and your intellect. But the reality is far more fragile. You are a biological specialist that has abandoned its natural hardware in favor of a technological crutch. You are the master of the planet, but you are also its most dependent resident. You have outsourced your very existence to a process you cannot perform with your own body. You are the only animal on Earth that would starve to death with a full stomach of raw food.